Welcome to the Romanian Reaver channel and my first impressions of Conan Exiles, a survival, online, cooperative, video game with a lot of PvP, PvE and exploration elements thrown in, plus some crafting. The crafting itself, while deep for a modern game, isn't quite as nuanced or as varied as, for example, Star Wars Galaxies, but it is fairly fucking deep. While you don't get a lot of variation within, let's say, if you want to make a stone sword, you can only make a stone sword. You can't make, for example, a stone, a flint, a obsidian sword, all three types stone swords, but yeah, But there are multiple types of swords, different types of swords you can actually find in the world. Swords you can get via basically sacrificing to gods and stuff like that. So the crafting or the crafting-esque element is quite deep. The exploration itself is pretty much monumental. And the survival element clicks into it quite a lot. To be honest, the first few minutes of the game are gonna be pretty scary because you're like, oh my god, I'm starving, well, mostly starving, mostly dying of thirst, and I'm in the middle of a buttfuck desert. But you just have to move pretty much in a diagonal and you're eventually gonna find an oasis with some water. You'll find bugs. They're not that nutritious, but at least you're gonna survive, In terms of combat, the game itself is pretty fucking stellar, to be honest. I am a wee bit glowing towards the game itself, but I will get the nastier bits. There is, in my opinion, a nasty bit to it. But, so to say, the combat is quite phenomenal for a game of its type. The survival elements usually require you to have a pretty clunky combat system. Even in games I quite enjoy in terms of combat, like The Forest, of the survival type, it isn't quite as good. There isn't a lot of dodging, there isn't a lot of weaving. In this game there is. There's also stamina management and the types of equipment you have, like for example if you wear heavy armor, yeah, your stamina is gonna deplete like fuck. But, it's a trade-off. You can take a punch, but you can't really move around a lot. So light armor versus heavy armor, it isn't always, a straight upgrade in terms of stats. You're like, okay, it's heavy armor, I'm more protected, yeah, but you also lose mobility, which can be quite critical when dealing with archers or that sort of enemy. The disadvantage of the game, from my point of view at the current time, is it's not really single player friendly. Granted, you could probably tweak around with the settings a significant amount and get the experience you want via your own single player co-op servers or co-op server, so to say. You also have the option of going full online on either official or hosted player servers. But playing purely single player with the stock settings is a grind. It's an immense grind. And in combat, if you die, you drop everything you have on you. So it's basically a EVE Online type system. Don't use what you can't afford to lose. So yeah, if you get too cocky and stuff like that and carry around a lot of stuff, granted the weight system won't allow you to carry around all your possessions, but if you get cocky, you can lose a lot. In my Let's Play of Conan Exiles, I did just that. I managed to lose most of my armor and weapons, the important ones. I did have backups, but yeah, it was not fun. And you should never underestimate enemies. Like for example, in combat, some of the status effects they can apply even through your armor are horrific. Like I got downed when I got cocky by a dancer type thrall, well, a potential dancer type thrall. I was like, okay, I gotta capture her, she's so good, she's so good. While I was searching around my bag, I trying to pull out the cudgel. She hit me about 5 or 6 times, possibly even more, with daggers, which applied a bleeding effect, and I bled to death through medium armor. So you have to be very careful when planning out expeditions, if you're alone in particular, to pack food and water, because if you don't have enough of those, you will die. Survival element, and you will lose everything. So yeah, the game itself is not really that conducive to single player. If you manage to get a lot of trolls together, you can start bypassing the grind element and stuff like that. But you will also start getting the attention of hostile critters and stuff like that. On the plus side though, there's a lot to explore in the world. There's a lot of house building, kingdom stuff, basically you capture frogs, and even if you're one dude on the entire game world, you're still able to build up a pretty decent NPC kingdom around yourself. There's also mobility elements in the game which came in with the combat rework, because initially the game didn't really have that great a combat, but with the rework, damn. Like for example, you can climb around and do stuff, which doesn't sound that important, but it kind of adds an entirely new element to siege battles, particularly when you're dealing with enemy players, so to say, because they can climb up your fucking walls. But yeah, overall, the game itself, as is, at the current time, is quite interesting. And as far as I've seen, the game developers themselves seem to be focused more on cosmetic monetization instead of going via the content side. So basically, they've already launched at the current time, which is the 28th of August, the Imperial East pack and the Jewel of the West pack for cosmetics. As I've seen so far, there's no intent on major content expansions being paid for, but I would imagine at one point they are gonna be doing a expansion tier DLC that you would have to pay for. But everything up so far in terms of content that isn't cosmetic, yeah, it's been up for grabs. So overall, the game itself, if you can get friends together, or if you're not that bothered by grind, yeah, it's quite great in terms of experience. And once you get a handle on planning your survival side, on dealing with the combat and the consequences of the combat, and getting a jive for the combat itself, because it being a wee bit more dynamic makes you a wee bit less easy to adapt to it. It's a lot easier to die in this game, but it's also a lot easier to live, so to say. It's no longer a who brought the bigger boot scenario like in most survival games. If you're that sort of individual who doesn't mind the learning curve and doesn't mind the grind, or has friends, yeah, this game is quite recommended. Otherwise, either get friends or look up on how to tweak the server settings, or possibly dive into the online side on PvE servers, or at least roleplay servers where the people tend to be towards peace loving, so that way if you run into troubles with PvPers, you can always dive into a settlement or something like that. In any case, that's my first impressions of the game, so thank you for watching, or more precisely surviving up until this point, because guys know the editing's kinda interesting and my voice has a melodic tone to it. If you like what you saw, feel free to hit the subscribe button, like button. It does help out the statistics of the channel, gets more visible, stuff like that. And to be honest, at one point I would like to actually make this a job so I can do better content with better quality, more games, more coverage, stuff like that. Take care.